Yo, what's going on YouTube? This is Zach with IT Career Questions. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about HomeLabs. Now you may have heard me refer to these before and maybe why they're so important, but if you are unfamiliar, you might be thinking, what is a HomeLab? Or if you are familiar with HomeLabs, you're like, well, I can't afford that. It's too much money, or you just can't get access to some of the equipment that may be required to produce your own home lab. Now, I want to let you guys know this video may be a little bit long, and I apologize for that, but we're going to try to cover everything that we possibly can at a basic level for home labs so you guys can understand why it's important, what the purpose is, and how you can gain an advantage through utilizing your own home lab to help you get a career in information technology. So let's get started and talk about what a home lab is. Today's video is brought to you by IT Pro TV. If you guys are looking to learn more about different certifications, different technologies, make sure you guys check out the link in the description below for IT Pro TV. And there you can also utilize their own practice labs, just like what we're talking about in this video today. Links in the description below. Use the coupon code ITCQ30, save 30% off of your subscription. And you may be thinking, is it some type of doctor's lab? Is it like an evil science lab? A home lab is simply a technology environment in your own home. And what you do is you utilize different technologies, different equipment to build somewhat of an enterprise environment within your home structure. So you can utilize multiple switches, routers, servers, different computers even. Utilize your own computer, and you're building something within your home that could almost replicate what you could find in an enterprise environment. Now, it's going to be, of course, more small scale in many ways, but the possibilities that you can utilize a home lab for are endless. So you could be utilizing a home lab to learn more about networking, where you're configuring switches. Maybe you're hooking up multiple computers to these switches and setting different rules within these switches. What you're doing here is getting some hands-on experience and really trying to understand these technologies that you will run into in an enterprise environment. Now, you can also utilize different computers, servers even, and build different virtual environments where you have a domain controller and you have Active Directory set up, and you utilize multiple computers to log into the domain or set different groups and set different membership access and things like that. Really, what I'm trying to say here is, as I said before, possibilities with this can be endless, but at a basic level, just kind of screwing around, right? Just trying to understand some of what you may be learning at the current point in time. And what the first thing that always comes to everybody's mind is, I can't afford that. And honestly, that's just not the case, because you can afford it. And I'm going to talk about multiple ways that you would be able to afford this or obtain some of this equipment. And as you guys can see behind me here, and I'll put up an image of what's behind me here, I have a server here, I have a couple different laptops, I have a couple different switches, and then even a desktop computer. Now, I got all of this equipment behind me for free. Free dollars. It cost me absolutely nothing. And what you can do to obtain free equipment yourself is reach out to different companies and ask them, hey, are you guys recycling anything? I'm looking to get into IT. Now, the chances here are going to be very, very slim, but it could be a possibility that they're going to, phase out some of their old equipment, and you could get your hands on that and bring it to your house to help utilize your own home lab. Now, other ways to obtain some of this equipment, especially desktops and things like that, is doing your own home PC repairs, or going out on a Facebook group or something and posting that you can fix people's computers, laptops, change out screens, keyboards, get rid of viruses, etc., etc. The list goes on. What happens when you start doing this and you start obtaining a customer base and they start coming back to you, year after year, is that eventually they'll start to upgrade their equipment, and then they'll ask you, hey, I have this old equipment, I want to get rid of it. Do you know what I could do? And you could say, yeah, I would love to take that off your hands. And I'll destroy the hard drive, of course, but I'll utilize this for my own home lab if that's okay with you. And that's how you obtain some of the equipment that, of course, like I have. I mean, this desktop back here, I obtained that for free. I've obtained multiple laptops for free. from customers because they were just getting rid of them. And it's like, well, I could utilize that, right? Now, getting into the field. When you first get into the field, into your organization, you'll find that they'll recycle things very often, hopefully, and you can get your hands on that as well. Sometimes you can buy some of this equipment back for really, really cheap. And speaking of buying, that's the next step here, right? If you were to take a look at all of the stuff behind me right now and put a retail value on it, you're talking thousands of dollars. And I by no means would want to pay thousands of dollars for this equipment. It's old, it may not be very good, it works, but it's not going to be worth me paying for, right? But for cheap, I could pay for it. If it's used, maybe pick up a switch and it has a couple broken ports on it, no big deal, right? I'm gonna pick it up for dirt cheap. So again, you reach out to companies and ask them these things. You find out on Craigslist, different Facebook groups. There's other resale websites online where you can get some of this stuff for pretty cheap, and it's definitely well worth it. And when I say cheap, you could pick up a lot of this stuff for less than $100 each. And that's a great deal, especially when you're looking at like 3750 switches, which retail for, you know, thousands of dollars. And you can pick up a used old one, maybe has a couple broken ports for, you know, $50. That's a steal. Now, you can't afford it, right? There's no way that you could possibly afford even $50. I understand. I have been there, we've all been there, and that's okay. You can virtualize everything. Anything that we've talked about so far that you could utilize, you know, hands-on equipment for, you can virtualize. So there's great programs out there like VirtualBox, or VMware offers a free resource as well, where you can virtualize different operating systems. Now, I do this in my own home lab. Everything is almost pretty much done off of my main computer here. And I'm gonna pull up VirtualBox just so you guys can get a quick idea of what I'm talking about. So this right here is VirtualBox. This is absolutely free to download. And you can see here that I have a couple different operating systems on here. We have Debian, we have Kali, Server 2016, Server 2019, and Ubuntu. These are all part of my own home lab. And I utilize these different operating systems to complete different tasks. As you can see, the Kali machine says Python test machine. For that Kali box, I utilize a couple different Python scripts to really test out. And a lot of those have to do with different bots that I'm using for different social media things and that nature. But it's just testing. I don't really care what happens to that machine because I'm just using it to test things. Same with the Server 2016 machine. It's just testing things. There's nothing really there except for the fact that it's joined to the same domain that our Server 2019 box is, and that Server 2019 box is our domain controller. So we set up that server as our domain controller so that we could utilize things like Active Directory and group policy and things like that, and we could join other computers to that domain and really try to play around with the different privileges, different types of group associations, and things like that, so we can really have a good understanding of what we're getting into in enterprise environments. Now, this right here, absolutely 100% free to do. You can download these ISOs for free from Microsoft website. They're like 190-day evaluations, but that's just fine. You can redo it again, and you should be documenting your process, which we'll talk about later in this video. However, this is a great way to start building your own home lab. Now, a couple things to note about virtualizing different operating systems from your computer. There are not necessarily hard requirements other than you should have at least 4 gigs of RAM. Now, if you have more RAM, you can utilize different operating systems at the same time. So on my machine, I have 32 gigs of RAM, and I can spin up 3-4 of these machines without any issue. Now, if you have 4 gigs of RAM, a slower processor, you may only be able to get away with one of these operating systems being virtualized at a time where you can actually launch it, run it, and do things within it without your computer really getting slowed down a lot. Now, what is important here is I didn't really mention processor speed entirely, because the slower it is, well, the worse experience that you're gonna have. The more RAM that you have, the better experience you will have. The better processor, of course, the better experience. But as long as you have at least 4 gigs of RAM and a halfway decent processor, you will be good to go. So you can pick up literally any single computer from the last 10 years or so and utilize it as a virtual machine. So you can install VirtualBox or VMware's resource and utilize it. You can do it. There's no hard requirements here. And as I said, the slower your computer is, the worse your experience will be, but you still can experience it. Now, I know you guys are going to ask me, well, what is the best computer? Or you guys are going to start putting in the comments, is this computer good for virtualization? Is that computer good for virtualization? The fact of the matter is, any single computer can be good for it. You have to try it out and see how that process works. But again, 4 gigs of RAM, bare minimum that you will need, and hopefully you have more because it's 2019 and I think everything comes standard with like 8 gigs or 16 gigs. So that is your virtualization within desktops in a nutshell, right? There's nothing that is a hard requirement for you guys. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do this. You can utilize your very own computer that you're maybe watching this from right now. So for those of you out there who are looking into networking, you say, well, I don't care about that virtualization stuff. It doesn't really apply to me that much. Well, it kind of does in some ways, and we could talk about that in other videos, but you can virtualize networks. And there's a great software out there called GNS3. You may have seen many other YouTubers talk about this, Network Chuck, David Bombal, I think even Dwan Lightfoot has talked about this as well. You can download this program and virtualize your very own network. So as you can see from the video here, you're able to do a lot with GNS3 as far as networking goes. So if you can't afford your own switch, you can download this software for free, follow tutorials all over the internet on how to get this prepared, set up, and really start diving deep into networking and understanding how switches and things like that work. So at a very basic level, building your own home lab can be relatively easy and inexpensive to do. Now, why would you want to do this? And the reason is very simple. You're getting some type of experience, some type of knowledge that you wouldn't normally gain. Now, if you are a veteran to IT, you more than likely have built a home lab in your past. Maybe you still currently have one. And it's still a great resource to utilize if you guys are learning new material and trying to just figure out new technologies. Now, if you are brand new to IT, this is going to be one of the most beneficial things that you can do to really boost your career, boost your knowledge, and give you an advantage because you are understanding technologies at home and really diving deep into these different technologies at home that you normally wouldn't see because you haven't stepped foot into an enterprise environment yet. So what you can do to utilize this at a grandiose scale is having documentation that shows that you've set up servers, set up different switches, and utilize that on your resume because that is how you're going to gain a huge advantage. And you're probably wondering, well, why? How? And the reason is again very simple. I've said the reason is very simple a couple times in this video. I apologize. But you can put this on your resume. You can put, the different things that you have some skills in, right? Now, you will get noticed from this. So if HR filters are scanning through things or somebody's reading through your resume and they see some of these different technologies that stick out and then they kind of say, well, he doesn't have experience. Well, they might call you in for the interview. They might call you with more questions. And you could say, well, hey, I utilize my own home lab. Here's all of my documentation. Now, the documentation part, right? A lot of people don't like documentation. A lot of people get intimidated by documentation. However, documentation is one of the most essential skills that you should be learning when it comes to any career, really, but more specifically, IT. Document every single thing that you do. Every step of the way, every change that you make, document it. Have a great base foundation to your documentation that gives a lot of the information that you can just look up quickly. Maybe you've utilized a domain controller, so you've set that up and you can document that process that you went through to set up a domain controller. You can document the process on configuring Active Directory. Maybe you've added multiple machines to the same domain. You can document that process, and it's going to be extremely beneficial for you. Now, what I have on my screen here is just a quick documentation example that I created based off of some of my virtual machines and things like that. And this isn't exactly what I have for my personal documentation because there's just a little bit more involved there and things that I don't necessarily want to share. but this is just a great example of how you can document at a basic level. Here you can see I have my virtual machines. I put my number of virtual machines in my environment, the types of operating systems running from those virtual machines, and then I have, IP addresses, the names of them, the purpose of them. I have the domain name here. Now we can go back to our server 2016, and you can see here that's the password, which really isn't the password. We just made that up, later skater. And we have the name, IP, domain, the purpose of it, the alternative purpose for it, installed on workstation, blah, 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 blah. We have configured with 100 gigs of RAM, 100 gigs of hard drive space, 4 gigs of RAM. We have just a quick process that we went to for setting this up. And it's very simple, right? Now you can, of course, add on to this exponentially, right? You can list every single thing that you did on this machine, and it's going to be greatly utilized. It's going to be a great resource for you. Now we have our Ubuntu machine. Again, here's our password, which really isn't our password, and we have all that information there as well. And now we kind of have the same for our network. I don't personally have my network switches hooked up in any way right now, but here is just a brief overview of how you can document part of that process. We have our base configuration for our network on how our network gets connected from the initial connection all the way through our different devices. And it's, again, simple to do. We have our storage device listed in here, and with more documentation, you can put in here what you're utilizing a NAS for. And as you guys can see here, not really utilizing my NAS for much other than I put a virtual machine on there, and then I have some different storage areas within that device to help really kind of segregate my data. And again, this is something that you can utilize to your advantage. So how do you share this, right? Well, you could share this OneNote. You could put a link to it in your resume, create like a bit.ly link or something. You can throw this out on a GitHub page, and obviously you want to redact some of the more crucial information, like maybe IP addresses, passwords, usernames, and things like that. But you could put it on GitHub. You can make a website. Now, making a website is really cheap nowadays. It's really easy to do. You can use things like Wix, WordPress. It builds it all for you. But you could be taking pictures of your lab. You could be posting documentation just like this. You can be posting different blogs on things that you've done for the day, for the week. You can make videos, put stuff out on YouTube. What's going to be one of the most important things here is making sure that you can link back to all this information from your resume. As you know, you guys are always sending out digital resumes at this point. Hopefully you're making PDFs, and you can include a link in there. So you can put, link to HomeLab, link to documentation, and put that link in there. And when people are reviewing your resume, they can go click on that, and they can see some of the things that you've done, some of the experience that you have. And this is going to be huge for you. This is how you gain that advantage, by having access to your documentation, access to the things that you have done. So whether you have stepped foot into an IT environment or not, this is going to be huge for you, because employers are looking for people with experience, and you can utilize this as your form of experience. It shows a lot of dedication. It shows that you're really interested in IT, and it's going to be just a big benefit for you. I want to give a huge shout out to everybody on LinkedIn who participated in my thread over there, where I asked you guys to post pictures of your own home lab so that people can get an idea of what or how you can build your own lab at home. And I will post a link to that in the description below so you guys can go check it out. You can reach these people there, ask them more questions about their whole setup, how that process worked, whatever you guys want, links in the description below. But here's a few examples of people's different home environments. And here's a few examples of some people's personal home labs that they have in their own home. And you guys can see they have different switches, they have servers. This person has a great workstation set up right there, and they're utilizing these for different things, of course. Again, reach out to them on LinkedIn for more information. And here this person is utilizing a Raspberry Pi as part of their home lab. Raspberry Pis are a great resource to build your own home environment as well. There's a lot of great information that you can find out on the internet about clustering Raspberry Pis and building a great network out of those. So make sure you guys look into that if that's something you're interested in as well. Here's another great example of somebody's home lab. Looks really fancy, right? But they have obviously multiple monitors, different machines set up here for their own home environment. Now here's one of my favorites, just because it says CDOS run, DOS run. That's just funny. It's just a nerd joke, right? totally funny to me. However, you can see they have some switches here. They have multiple monitors set up, multiple computers set up here. And this is part of their home lab, which is, it looks great, right? I actually really do appreciate this one right here. And here's another example of somebody's home network. They're using some TP-Link routers to understand and learn networking. Maybe they have their own whole entire network set up within their environment. But again, it's just another great example. And as you can see, pretty basic, right? But it works great for them. I hope this video helped answer some of the questions that you might have about building a home lab. Again, you don't have to spend thousands, hundreds of dollars even to build your own home lab. You can virtualize everything, but building a home lab is going to be a huge advantage to you. So if you guys have any other questions or comments, please go in our comments below. Let me know if you guys are utilizing your own home lab and what you have set up. Of course, head over to LinkedIn where you guys can add pictures of your own home lab and talk about what you're doing over there as well. Or if you guys have some ideas, go ahead and shoot them in the comments below, and I'm sure somebody out there, if not me, will answer and help guide the path for you to building a great home lab. That's all I got for you guys in today's video. As always, take it easy.